Welcome to Business Globe. Minister Audley and former President of Mexico Vicente Fox gave their speech at the 2018 staging of Canex JA held at the Montego Bay Convention Center. Let's start this segment by listening to Mr. Shaw's speech, and after, we'll listen to Mr. Vicente's speech.
Following my visit to Canada, one of our first Jamaican licensed companies, Timeless Herbal Care, Courtney Betty, is right here with us. And Courtney, incidentally, is a former head of the Fair Trading Commission in Jamaica. And Courtney is now head of Timeless Herbal Care. He began the process with Health Canada to obtain an import permit for samples, oils extracted in Jamaica. The import permit is the first issued by Health Canada to allow for the legal import of Jamaican cannabis oil from Jamaica. Timeless then applied to the Ministry of Health in Jamaica, and upon proof of the legal import permit from Canada, was awarded an export permit by the Ministry of Health of Jamaica. This shipment of 100% Jamaican-grown and extracted oil is a pivotal step, ladies and gentlemen, in positioning Jamaica as an entrant into the multi-billion-dollar international medical cannabis industry. Yes, we are ready. So the government of Jamaica is sharpening our focus in this regard, and Canada's industry already said to be about $20 billion, with cannabis companies rapidly moving and growing on the Canadian Stock Exchange. My first step as the minister with responsibility for this area was to strengthen the Cannabis Licensing Authority, and in our supplementary budget, which is now before Parliament, tabled earlier this week, their extra resources are being put into the budget to support the strengthening of the Cannabis Licensing Authority. On my recent trip to Canada, I met with the regulator, Health Canada, who expressed a willingness to work with the Cannabis Licensing Authority in building a bridge between our regulators. I toured companies such as MedRelief and Toronto Research Chemicals, who further highlighted the tremendous opportunities which await Jamaica. This excitement continued as I participated in a European Union conference a few weeks ago. Again, in Europe, the demand for Jamaican medical marijuana was highlighted, and we are now in discussions with individual countries to create the formal process of building these relationships. These are but a few examples of the commitments I have made internationally to build this industry. My commitment and the government's commitment is not new. Take a look at, in my case, my first budget speech as Minister of Finance. Little did I know I was coming so close to cannabis as Minister for Agriculture and Industry. But then I said, I made it clear that Jamaica must move with a new sense of urgency and purpose, that we must again become leaders, not followers trying to catch the boat. A lot of my colleagues in the House, eyebrows were raised when I made this point. I have no regrets. Now, as the minister with responsibility for building the industry, I have engaged all stakeholders in our society and sent the strong message: ganja is not the problem. It is a part of Jamaica's solution. I have created a team to ensure that the tremendous benefits of our farmers and the opportunities for them are maximized. For many of our farmers, being part of a regulated legal industry will help to raise them and their communities to a higher level of prosperity. I recognize the challenge of these farmers and have created a framework where they can work together in cooperatives and be able to sell to licensed producers to create value-added products. Cabinet has already authorized 2 pilot projects to start. The first is with the Maroons in the compound. The Maroons, who are Jamaica's indigenous people, have tremendous acreage of fertile land along with a long history of creating medicine from plants. Is the Colonel of the Maroons here? Not here yet. Okay. In July, we had the opening of the first seed-to-sale cannabis retail store in Kingston, our capital city. Owned by brothers Karib and Dwayne McKenzie, Epican is the first company to be granted a license to cultivate, process, and retail medical-grade ganja by the Cannabis Licensing Authority. These young entrepreneurs have taken the bull by the horn and are not only providing a product rooted in Jamaican sun and soil, but have also spent 3 years educating local farmers in methods that meet international growing standards in an effort to bring marijuana farming in Jamaica out of the shadows and onto the global stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is but an example of what any Jamaican entrepreneur can accomplish in this sector. What about the Cannabis Licensing Authority? We recognize that for Jamaica to reap the benefits of this industry, we must continue to facilitate and create an environment and encourage sector growth and transparency. Absolutely critical. We know that there are some barriers right now, there are difficulties. We all know about the issue of the de-risking through the United States in terms of moving money. I am encouraged by recent comments by President Trump in conversations with the Senator Mitch McConnell and other U.S. senators, in which the President has specifically suggested that they are going to be obliged to take a more careful look at medicinal cannabis in the first instance. Because in this issue of the movement of money, it is small countries like Jamaica that will tend to suffer the most. The big boys have a way of finding a way around that issue. All of our commercial banks in Jamaica are obliged right now to go through the New York system in terms of the movement of money internationally. So this is something that I'm asking you at your level in this room, whatever you can do to help us in joining in a great lobby to the United States to say the time has come for you to change your approach. Otherwise, you are going to cause problems in terms of the credible and transparent movement of money in the industry globally. The United States has an obligation, in my view, to take a very, very serious and urgent look at this issue. It cannot be about a verbal war between Mr. Sessions and the President. This one is bigger. This one has global implications, and the United States, as a leader in the world, has an obligation to help to create transparency and mobility in resources surrounding the cannabis industry. It was not in my script, but I thought it was appropriate and important to say it. Why are you laughing so much? Now, in this regard, in relation to the Cannabis Licensing Authority, I'm pleased to report that they have to date processed 507 applications. These are not 507 companies, however. Of course, one company might apply for 3, 4, 5 licenses. But we have 507 applications, and up to August, we have issued 22 licenses, which includes 4 retail licenses for herb houses and 13 cultivators licenses. And with the resources that I'm now appropriating to the authority, we will see a much more aggressive flow of licenses being approved. The CLA also continues to forge relationships with other global regulators to increase partnerships and encourage bilateral working relationships. In fact, Mr. Allen, who is late coming here now, was in Canada this week as part of this initiative. Other initiatives that we are using to support this industry, ladies and gentlemen, we are making lands available. You know, we are in a process of transition in Jamaica. For a couple of 100 years, sugar has been the master in Jamaica. Now we are obliged to have diversification of our land. Some rationalized will remain in sugar. Then we have other things that we are obliged to plant. We need to do more orchard crops. We just got approval from the United States to export our fine mangoes to the United States, fresh mangoes. So look out, Mexico, dumb rep, your mangoes won't be able to stand up to the Jamaican mangoes. And then there are so many other things. You know, everywhere sugar cane grows, so sorghum can grow. Sorghum is the raw material for animal feed, yet we import all our sorghum. Castor oil. Everywhere we go abroad, we see somebody plagiarizing Jamaica's name, calling their castor oil made in Jamaica. Not made in Jamaica at all, but the Jamaican castor oil has been unique. And everywhere sugarcane grows, castor beans can grow. I've already identified 2,000 acres in Clarendon and offered it to the Association of Castor Bean Growers. Then there is Sea Island cotton. The finest cotton in the world is grown right here in Jamaica. In Italy and in Spain, one T-shirt made of Sea Island cotton is about $700 for that T-shirt. And that is something we are going to be. These are things we're appropriating land for, but there is also cannabis. We have to make lands available for cannabis as well. We are identifying also funding sources, and this is important, because it's not just cannabis, it's also the small and medium enterprises that need financing. And we have not made enough money available to this sector in Jamaica. One of the things we're looking at is the question of dormant funds, unclaimed funds in the banking system. The global standard for the return of unclaimed funds to the central government is about 7 years. In Jamaica, it's 15 years. In the United States, it's 5 years. Now, if as the government makes a decision to bring this down to at least 7.5 years, we'll have a pool out of a total volume of dormant funds of $45 billion. We'll have $15 billion available immediately, which my recommendation to the Prime Minister and the government is that, and the new Minister of Finance, is that we should create a special development fund with that $15 billion targeted to our small and medium enterprises, including our small farmers in the cannabis sector. These are things we want to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I wrap up, we have other things that the CLA are doing, the drafting of, the completion of the regulations to govern the industry, the increase of staff complement. All of these things are being done with the additional resources I've provided. Testing and labeling standards, identification card systems, increase of enforcement, surveillance and monitoring activities, procurement of world check software, track and trace systems. We want you to know that we want to be at the first world level in our comportment for and guarantee of absolute integrity and transparency in the management of this industry. Ladies and gentlemen, as you see, we have come a long way since passing legislation in 2015. More importantly, we have done this in a manner which balances our local society, international treaty obligations, and most importantly, creating a strong framework for investors and companies to come and join us in a truly mutually beneficial relationship. All of you have come here today representing a wide spectrum of interest in Jamaica. And let me be clear, together we can work to build Jamaica by helping to transform our communities, mobilizing our people who have a long history of growing cannabis, which has attracted people from all corners of the globe. Now, with changes taking place in many countries, such as Canada, which will legalize recreational marijuana, among other things, as well as the medicinal, in a few weeks, Jamaica must capitalize on one of our assets and help to bring health and wellness to the world. God bless all of you, and thank you very much.
in its manufacturing plants in Mexico. So we must rescue this industry. We must take this plant away from the criminals. Mexico has to get out of this trap. And this brings me to tell you that I've been involved as an activist, not as a consumer, on this industry for over 10 years. I decided to jump in the arena and do something about my country and the blood and the loss of life of those 80,000 kids every year. And I've been convinced that this is the way out for Mexico and that this is the way ahead to build a new successful industry that generates wealth, that creates jobs, and that is good for everybody's health. And this is what is already happening, and happening very fast. And of course, the United States has advanced statewide at local levels, but yet it has to move ahead as a federation, as a nation, because that will give fluent channels of growth to this industry. We know it's a good industry, and today I know it's in hands of responsible people. And be aware of that. If each one of us or one of us does not behave, commits mistakes, and don't handle this with transparency, with honesty, with legality, with integrity, the industry would fail. And we'll go back to what it was. So each one of us has a great responsibility with this industry and the future of this industry. And that's what I have learned. 10 years ago, I was in Seattle and then Vancouver. And I addressed not only my first conferences, but also I met press at that time. And sitting in front of press, I would tell them, what a difference it makes. Me sitting here by the side of James Shibley, one of the actors of the industry in that part of the United States and Canada, instead of being sitting by the side of Chapo Guzman, that tough criminal in Mexico that got out of jail. They say that he did digging a hole and getting out of jail. He just used $1 million and bribed the authorities of jail. They opened the doors for him. And this is the problem in Mexico with cartels. They are so powerful. They have so much money that they can buy all the weapons and ammunition that you can dream. And these powerful cartels hire these kids. 100,000 of them are working for them and risking their lives every day out on the streets of Mexico. And these cartels bribe the army generals, they bribe governors, they bribe mayors, they bribe anybody that they can in Mexico. It's a tough war, very difficult to get out of it because of all that money. So now I have the hope and the dream that we're going to take away from them pretty good amount of money. And by the way, I'm for legalizing each and every one single drug in this world. Why? Because we were created free, each one of us. And we were created free by God or whoever to make us responsible to take our own free decisions. And it's free decision to use whatever products I want to use or consume. It's free to decide what do I do with my body for women. It's free to decide what choices I have and what choices and risks I want to take. That's the apology of freedom. And that's what we all were created with. But we must exercise freedom with responsibility. So after this panorama, now I get a little bit into Mexico. Mexico, fortunately, has already approved medical use as a nation for cannabis. Up to now, we don't yet have the regulation. Every law has to have a regulation so that you operate that law and that you move ahead. So we're waiting for that regulation. One good side to look at this delay is that the first draft that we heard about, and it was in Canex. This is the equivalent of this gathering here, but in Central Fox, in the Presidential Library in Mexico. We brought in 1,500 top participants of the industry, and we brought all the authorities of Mexico, federal, state, and local, and we discussed. And our intention was to promote the opening of the industry. And when we heard from COFEPRIS what they had planned as a regulation, it was so limited that even the law that had been approved was this wide, and the regulation narrowed this thing. So there is fear in Mexico on the side of authorities. It's fear on the side of government. And this is true because of the specific problems we have in Mexico with this war on crime and war on cartels and war on drugs. It's a culture today. So we have to break the paradigm. And that was the intention of this gathering, Canex, in Central Fox in April of this year. And it worked. At least authorities started to thinking back again the kind of regulation. And now it's changing. Could you understand that Mexico was opening the industry, but was forbidding, was prohibiting the production in Mexico? It's incredible. What then you open this industry for in your country? To only import foreign products and not produce your own, like you're doing here, and like the plans of the industry are for Jamaica. So now this document coming is much more positive. It still has much more to accomplish, but we're on the right path. So that's good news. I don't think this will be decided and opened publicly before the end of this government. The actual government finishes December 1st. New government takes over, inaugurates. Fortunately, second good news is that new government is very open to this. She who is going to be the Minister of the Interior, she's totally in favor. She has announced publicly that we will not only have the regulation immediately, but that we also are going to proceed to open and legalize recreational use. So this might happen in the beginning of next year. Very possibly it will happen. So there we have 130 million Mexicans that are going to be open and let free to decide what they want to consume. For the moment, we know that at least 10% of the population under restrictions and prohibitions, 10% has consumed marijuana or cannabis illegally. Imagine what that can change when this becomes legal. But that's only the recreational use. The medical use is just beginning. It's just starting at this very moment. And some companies that are already ready to come into the market in Mexico talk about from 3 to 5 million patients that are going to be using cannabis medical products. So big market is about to open. Well, this is my message to you. You're on the right industry. You are on the industry of the future, but look at what's happening in the world. What we have advanced and the way we have walked to the future, now some people are proposing to withdraw back come back to the nation state, isolate your economy, isolate your nation, and don't work as a team with the rest of the world. So we must avoid that from happening. Not one single nation, even the most powerful nation in the world, can produce anything they need, can be successful and competitive on getting their economy growing. It has to be associated, it has to be working for others. That's why we have NAFTA corporations today. NAFTA corporations is General Motors. They produce in Mexico, they produce in Canada, they produce in the United States. And they're competitive. Don't forget they went broke just 5 years ago. And taxpayers had to rescue General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford Motor Company. And today they're back to life. And they have become NAFTA corporations. And they have become competitive. They can compete with Mercedes-Benz, with Toyota, with Nissan, with Volkswagen, and the others. If this man, and he's pretending to, bring back those corporations to produce only in America, they will go broke again. So we must be alert that this industry has to be open, has to be international, has to be responsibility of all of us. We must take care of this industry and make it successful for the better of many, many human beings that are going to save their lives or that are going to get the right medical products to save their lives or that are going to be having a job that they didn't have before or that are going to begin farming and getting income. So we're going to have a chance to be on a panel right now. But that's my message to you. I thank you very much for the invitation and enjoy it.
Thanks for watching Business Globe.